This video is sponsored by JudoGrid Modular Display System. Making your battlefields look thematical, lived in, and just plain awesome is one thing. Getting them painted is quite another. Well, fear not, because in this video, I'm going to show you some quick and easy methods to get them on the tabletop so you can spend more time bashing the living daylights out of your opponents. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. Now, in all my years of being an army painter, one of the biggest bugbears I see for a lot of hobbyists is painting terrain, but more specifically, painting all those teeny tiny little bits of paraphernalia that you scatter across the battlefield. And for a lot of people, that can be quite off-putting. For me, I love it, and I assume for a lot of people out there, they love it too. But for those of you that don't like it so much, that's the purpose of this video, is to get a lot of that stuff painted on the tabletop quickly and efficiently. And you can just have fun playing games and shooting stuff or stabbing stuff or melting stuff. Now, from a speed point of view, I always use a variety of sprays to basically do a lot of the heavy lifting. Granted, if you don't have a variety of sprays, that's fine. You can do this from a black undercoat, but it does make a lot of sense finding the appropriate color, which then just cuts out a lot of, well, time, really. And that's one of the things that you'll probably see in this video is actually using different coloured spray coats, especially if you like doing like the Mantic terrain crate and you've got all the gold and chests and stuff. You can just spray those different colours, but it just speeds things along and you can then just cut a few corners here and there. Jobs are good in, and then you've got stuff on the tabletop a lot quicker. That is kind of a mantra I use for a lot of painting anyway, but certainly for battlefield terrain, accessories and stuff, it really does speed it along, which kind of means you can just get back into the action and roll lots of dice. But enough of my chit chat. Let's crack on looking at painting crates and containers and things. Now, first up, I've got some sci-fi terrain, which is a set of 3D printed defense lines. Thank you very much, Rob, for printing that. Designed by Tabletop Terrain. So this is going to cover a lot of things like Necromunda, Star Wars Shatterpoint, Legion, anything 40k, whether you've got defense lines and stuff, because it's got some barrels in there, it's got some crates, it's got some walls. I'm also going to add in a little bit of some Necromunda barricades at the end as well, just to show some other things you can do as well. But yeah, if you want a speedy way of trying to get like some crates, barrels and walls painted, stay tuned. So my first protocol is to do an overbrush. I'm not really doing a dry brush here, I'm just wiping some of the paint off and I'm just doing a heavy overbrush over those barrels. I think the barrels, there might be some weird sort of mines, whatever they are. They're going green, so I'm just going to do a heavy dry brush over. I'm not getting all the nooks and crannies because my wash later on will do all of that hard work. Next is to get some red. I'm just going to dry brush that over any crates I've got. You could do some barrels, red if you wanted to, swap it around, do some blue, it's entirely up to you. Then I get some metal, and what I'm going to do here is dry brush initially over that wall. I want it just like a dark iron kind of colour, so that's why it's black with a silver dry brush. And then I'm just going to go over the barrels and the crates as well, just to give them a bit of a battered look. Just a nice way to tie them all together. Then it's for that wash, so what I'm going to do is get some dark rust, really thin it down. So a couple of paintbrushes of water, load up my brush. Then it's just a matter of applying that over the areas that I want. Initially I'll put it in like some of the recesses, and then I can just thin out with a bit of water if need be. So it can be quite heavy to start off with, then just apply water to the actual barricade itself and then just thin it on the actual piece. Get the old finger wiping in there as well for a little highlight. Then for some slightly lighter rust effects, or weathering if you prefer, I'm just going to get some fresh rust and just apply that. Some places it might look a bit too much, so again you can always water it down on the actual piece. But once it's dry, it will be a little bit more subtle anyway. So again, just work your way around, finger wipe if you need to. And once it's dry, you can always add more if you feel it needs it. And then by all means, pull out the hairdryer to speed things along a bit. After that initial hairdryer, I can just apply a second coat if I need to for a bit more brightness or a bit more weathering. This terrain will have multiple uses anyway, so Necromunda, Stargrave, 40k, whatever. So it ties in nicely. And just to make it a little bit more chipped if you need to, because that wash will have darkened it down a bit, you can just go back over it with a dry brush of silver just to pick out some edges. Now for those Necromunda barricades, I start off with a brown undercoat here. Yes, it's on the sprue, it's more just so you can see it actually on the sprue, because often I do that. Just a heavy overbrush of that dark rust, really thin down. Again, adding water to the actual piece if needs be. And then once that's dry, I can get some fresh rust into some of those deeper recesses. You could just leave this at this point as well. So it just looks like some old, really battered, rusty piece of equipment or barricade, which is quite nice. Again, just dropping some of that rust in some of those deeper recesses if you need to. And of course, to keep that dark iron theme going, you can just add a little bit of a silver dry brush. This first bit's just a bit lighter, but then you can go a bit heavy if you feel it needs to go a bit heavier. I often do this with terrain, so I can have a bit of a choice. And for that classic Peachy reverse highlighting method, just so it looks like old, chipped and worn and weathered paint, I like to just thin down whatever colour I want to use and start applying that in some of the deeper recesses first, but not going to the edges, so like where the little pits are or like bullet holes. I'm not going all the way to the edge on those. In some of the deeper recesses I am, because usually when paint gets worn on like metal surfaces, you see it more on the cracks but not on the edges, because obviously it's worn away. Again, just build up those coats, do a second coat if you need to, or a third coat. Just give it that effect that it just looks a bit old and battered. I really do like this effect. It's quite simple, quite straightforward, and you can be a bit rough as well. You don't have to be too neat. And then it's just a matter of getting some of that dark rust again. And because inevitably, by adding that red, you're going to have lost some of the like, weathering in the recesses, so you can just reapply that if you need to. You can always do the red before you do the wash. There's many different ways of doing it. And there we are. There is our sci-fi battered barricades, crates, barrels, whatever you want to call it, in all their glory. Again, bear in mind that when you are doing this, you're doing it for a collection of barricades, not just one. So when you see them all together, it makes more sense. So there we are. So the key to this really is not getting hung up on the base coating stage, because you don't have to go into all the cracks. If you do, that's fine. I'm not going to judge anyone that does that. That's entirely up to you, but it does take a little bit longer. You are wasting a little bit more time. Whereas that dirty wash, that grimy wash, or that rusty wash is going to go in all the crevices for you. So it's kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting. So that's why I tend not to go all the way into the cracks, because I know the wash is going to do that. So that's just something to bear in mind when you are doing any type of terrain. Is if you do your test model, you can see the end result. You're like, actually, I don't need to go all the way into those cracks, because I know this effect I'm going to do later on is going to do that for me. So that's just something to bear in mind. And the reverse highlighting thing, I've done it a few times, but it's one of my favorite ways of getting battered looking chipped paint on like flat surfaces like doors or tanks or whatever kind of vehicle you want to do. So it's a really nice, simple way of doing it. So next up is a bunch of treasure and chests made by Mantic from their treasure crate set. It's a really good set actually. So if you wanted to bling up your battlefield or make a dragon horde for some kind of D&D adventure, it's a great set for doing that. But before we crack on, let's hear what Major Richard Sharp and Rifleman Peach have to say about this video's sponsor. Mr. Sharp, sir, we've been given a delivery from HQ, Mr. Sharp, sir.
What the devil is it, Peach?
Let me have a look, Mr. Sharp, sir. Oh, it's that new JudoGrid display system, Mr. Sharp, sir.
You bloody what?
From Crate 3D, Mr. Sharp, sir.
What the devil is it, Peach?
Well, Mr. Sharp, sir, the Judo Crate system allows you to complete a custom build, a display case to any size. And it's loaded with tons of different accessories, Mr. Sharp, sir. So you can display everything from small miniatures to massive action figures and everything in between, Mr. Sharp, sir. Plus you can configure it online, Mr. Sharp, sir, so you can see exactly what it looks like on your wall, Mr. Sharp, sir. Or tent in our case, Mr. Sharp, sir.
You bloody what?
It's 100% modular, so if you want to increase it in size later on, you can. There's tons of accessories available, Mr. Sharp, sir. Lots in the stretch goals as well, Mr. Sharp, sir. The team is also picking suggested accessories from the comments on the Kickstarter, Mr. Sharp, sir.
I have no idea what online and Kickstarter means, Rifleman Peach. I need rifles, guns, swords, not bloody display cases.
Well, you have been looking for something to show off that gold eagle you took off the French at Talavera, Mr. Sharp, sir. And I know you're looking to get more, Mr. Sharp, sir.
Ah, you're bloody right. And the head of that werewolf I killed a couple of weeks back. Bloody hell. Stick it in my tent then. Ooh, and get one for Harper too. He can stick his volley gun in that.
Oh, the Kickstarter's on now, by the way, Mr. Sharp, sir. Thought I'd mention that, Mr. Sharp, sir.
Right, let's go kill some French
Whoa, okay, yeah, we'll keep that one for after hours. Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Right, let's crack on with painting some chests and some gold.
Well, I've got piles of like crates and chests. I like to do an overbrush of a brown. Here I'm using leather brown. That just it's really good for picking up the woodwork. Just take your time, work your way round. And then if you've got any parchment stuff, you can just go a bit heavier. That's just a good sort of base coat before you move on to lighter colours. And then I'm just going to get a lighter brown and I'm just going to work around on some of the edges just to help pick out some of that woodwork a bit more. Give it more definition. Then I'm just going to base coat any scroll work that might be on this pile of crates and chests. Any kind of beige or parchment-y kind of colour will do the job. And for large parchment areas, you can always do like little horizontal streaks just to look like old paper. Then any metal details. So this is going to be all the banding around the chests and any crates and stuff like that. So I like to do a mix, especially if I've got a pile like this. So I'll do some of like a dark metal, like death metal here. Again, just work my way around, picking those details out. Again, if you're making a mistake, you can always go back over with some brown. It's fine. Other areas I might do like silver. You could do gold or brass or bronze. It's entirely up to you. It just helps break the shape up a bit so it just doesn't become too much of a shapeless mass or too samey. Then any gold details. So I've got a little chest here with some gold pouring out. So again, just pick them out a bit of gold. The odd random coin left here and there. And then classic Peachy, just wash all over. Got some strong tone here. Again, you can apply it quite heavily and then thin it down on the actual model. Just work your way around, make sure it's not too much pooling here and there. A little Army Painter highlighting top tip here is just for a quick, easy highlight, just dry brush the entire lot with sort of a beige colour. Here I'm using Dusty Skull. You could leave it at that and then carry on with your life. It's entirely up to you. It just gives it a nice dusty effect and works well on the metals as well, makes them look dusty. However, some of you might not want to do that, and that's fine. For the parchment and stuff, I'm just going to start like using, like, again, horizontal streaks on that parchment. Yes, a few mistakes have been made there, but I know that I'll be covering that in a moment or two by doing the parchment underneath. And again, work your way around. Because sometimes the dry brush can do a certain point, but if you do these little streaky like flicks and stuff, it just makes it look like old, cracked paper, which is nice. And for a little bit of differentiation on the chest, just so they pop out a bit more so they're not all too samey, just going to get some of that green I used on the sci-fi terrain, thin it down and then just apply. You could use contrasts or speed paints to do this. I just like to, it looks like old paint that's worn away or just a bit algae and mossy, whichever works for you. And again, you can always do a second coat just getting some of those recesses. And then here I'm just going to use a speed paint. It's just a slightly different tone of brown. Again, that will just make this particular chest pop out from some of the others around it. I'll also wash it all over this chest so it makes the metals and the brown look a little bit different from the chests around it. And if you want to highlight that parchment a little bit more, just get yourself a nice light bone and then you either just pick out the edges or like I'm doing here, carry on with that streaky effect. You could use this instead of doing text so it just looks like it's worn away. It's entirely up to you, but I like the idea of drawing a little map. So I thought I'd just get some black, thin it down, and then just make a little map of an island. Maybe it's a treasure island. Do some little mountains. Some little jaggedy mountains. That's quite nice. Everyone loves a treasure map. Some little woods, maybe jungles, a couple of more woods down there. Tolkien-esque style woods. And of course, a couple of important markers to let us know where maybe the treasure is or where you landed and where you're going to get the treasure. Talking of treasure, let's move on to painting piles of treasure. Now, it's easy if you spray them gold. I find this, and then I can just pick out other little colours here and there. So like the woodwork here, I'm just going to use like a speed paint, which is dark wood. Again, whatever contrast or thin down paint you have available. Just work your way around, picking out that wood detail. Again, if you're making mistakes and getting the gold, you can always wipe it with your finger or just tidy it with gold after. And some places you might need to do a second coat because some of that metallic element will shine through. And then over all those coins, get yourself a nice sort of warm but sort of ready kind of wash and apply it all over here. I'm using Peachy Flesh because it makes sense and it's got a bit of a blinginess to it. If you want to add a bit more depth, get some of that dark wood and just add that in some of those deeper recesses like I'm doing here. Of course, getting some more of that Peachy Flesh on the chest as well. Also makes that wood look a bit richer too. And then any silver areas, just go around picking those out with silver. Again, you've got a big like bowl, platter, I don't know what it is. Looks nice though. Good enough to put some fruit in. Again, what's a pile of gold without the odd silver coins scattered around here and there? So just work your way around, picking out those silver coins. Again, you can go as mad as you like. It's entirely up to you. Some place you might need to do a second coat, like on the bowl. But yeah, have fun picking out some silver. Then what I do is get myself a lighter silver. Now, I always dry brush golds with lighter silvers anyway, because it just adds a bit more punch. If you just use light golds, it's not as noticeable, it's a bit more subtle. So this is going to kind of highlight up the silvers and the gold. Some places you might need to tidy up. I could just add to there. And I use that desolate brown that I used on the chests earlier. That's just going to help pick out some of the other items, just to be a little bit different, make them stand out a bit more. Maybe it's an old bit of tarnished metal or tarnished gold, or it's just a different material. Then it's moving on to picking out any gems. There's a few scattered on here. So again, contrasts, speed paints are your friends here. The blue wasn't as punchy as I'd like, but then I could have painted them silver and then done that a bit better. So, but it worked for me. I'm happy with them. That green, that shamrock green, that is a strong, bright, vibrant colour. I love it. So you just go around, pick them out. Don't have to pick out like all the rainbows of colours, just enough to break the shape up a bit. However, speed paints dry matte. So I'm going to get some gloss varnish on those just to make them look a little bit more gem-like, I guess. And just work your way around. And then in some places, certainly if you've overdone it with a dry brush or it just needs a bit more, just get some wash, Peachy flesh like I've got here, and just drop it in those recesses. Again, a bit more definition, a bit more contrast. It just helps break the shape up a bit as well. It doesn't become too, well, samey. And there we are, a huge pile of gold and treasure worthy of any dragon's hoard or some king's treasure trove deep in the vaults. Great for sneaking and thieving. Well, there we go. Some quick and easy ways of painting chests and gold. And again, you can use this for other stuff. Like if you've got crates, like wooden crates and stuff like that, you can use the same method that I use for the chests on that. The gold piles, I mean, you could do silver piles or copper piles if you really wanted to, but gold looks cooler, I think. Now, I can't cover everything in this video. There's a lot of different types of debris. So hopefully just like some crates, some barrels, some walls, some containers, chests, etc. is enough to keep you going. And again, they're quite quick fire ways of doing it. So do bear that in mind. These aren't going to, as a single thing, aren't going to win you any awards. Never. That's never the purpose of these videos. It's about getting stuff done quickly, but looks cool from a distance. And you're doing a lot. So like the defense line, for instance, in the video, I was just doing the one, but actually there's like a whole set there. So when they're on the tabletop, they look amazing when they're together. And that's the thing to remember when you're doing this. You can get hung up looking at the individual and going, oh, it could be better. But then you've got to remember, no, I've got 50 of these to do. Oh, I've got 20 of these to do. So always remember that when you're painting. Don't just focus on the one that you're doing in front of you at that moment in time. Think about the other, however many you've got to do as well. And of course, remember, using different colour spray paints can speed up stuff so much. So do bear that in mind. Granted, not everyone has a million spray paints at home. You might just have the black, which is why I covered that at the start. Also, you might have airbrushes, so you can use your airbrush instead of a spray can. Whichever it is, I would recommend getting a variety of colours over time because they're useful for a lot of things, not just like terrain, but also whatever colour scheme you're doing for your regiments and stuff. I mean, personally, I always make sure I've got like a black spray, a white spray, a grey spray, a brown spray, a green one, and like a sandy one. They're great for just scenery in general. Sometimes like a blue spray or a yellow is very particular for like whatever legion or chapter you're doing for your space marines and stuff. But yes, in general, I have my go-to sprays, which tend to be like some neutral colors for all manner of stuff, really. So yes, it's worth like collecting that over time. Thank you again for watching this video, and thank you to our sponsors, 3D Crates. Do go check them out. They've got some amazing stuff. Really useful if you've got a Lego collection of minifigures that's spiraling out of control, which is something I'm going to be fixing very soon because I've got so many. I mean, Lego minifigures are cool anyway, but yeah. As always, as well, a huge thank you to these beautiful people that are coming by now. Without you, well, I can't make these videos. And even though it's a quick fire video this time around, I still really appreciate all your support. So thank you so much. And you may notice I managed to get through this video without waffling too much. Normally I sit and I waffle and I go on and I have to edit loads of stuff out and it just, oh, I'm doing it again. I just realized. Anyway, bye.